So when I was abroad last semester, I took 2 trips to London, which was a really, really great experience because London is like one of those cities that I've always dreamed of going to, and it's always like been there, and like the stories that have been really important to me, and it's just always been a place that I really wanted to visit and that I really like felt connected with for like a long, long period of my life, basically probably since I could read. So that's like a pretty long time. When I got there, it was amazing because I felt so comfortable and so at ease in a place that I had like just gotten to, and so that was really special to me, and it made me feel really validated in how much I had like loved the city in the past. So basically it was just amazing to be there. One of the places that I got to go both times I went there was Kensington Gardens and the Peter Pan statue. Peter Pan is one of those stories that, I mean, like you love in different stages, I feel like. I loved it when I was a kid, like probably Disney movie or whatever, though I don't really remember that part as much. The big turning point was probably when the 2003 Peter Pan movie came out, and I was obsessed with it. I watched it so many times, all the time, always, and it just became like a part of like who I grew up to be, really. And then of course I read the book, and the book is amazing, and so it was just really special to go there, and I loved it, and I was freaking out the whole time. The second time I went, though, I went with a friend who had like no idea what Peter Pan was. She was so confused why like we wanted to go visit it so much, and like why there were even other tourists there like taking pictures, and I had a really hard time explaining to her because she barely knew what it was about. So I was like trying to explain to her what it was about at the same time that I was trying to explain why it was so important to me. And it didn't really work out. I'm pretty sure it just came out something like, "Oh my god, Peter Pan though, he's like so great, Peter Pan? You don't get Peter Pan? What? Peter Pan." So that really stuck with me, that experience of like not being able to like tell her why Peter Pan was so great. And so the first book that I read this year, in 2013, the first book towards the 50 Books Challenge, was Peter Pan, because I had this really nice Barnes & Noble edition that I hadn't read yet. And so I pulled it out and read it again. Peter Pan is really famous for its portrayal of childhood, and I think on this reread that's what struck me the most. Like, I'm not a child anymore. I just turned 21, and it's like just a slightly different experience reading it when you're older, because you're kind of alienated and isolated from that world of childhood. But I think something that you notice reading it as an adult is that the childhood is like, it's this amazing fantasy. Peter Pan lives in Neverland, which has like pirates and adventures and mermaids and fairies, and it's like this great idyllic place where they go just to like cast off like the real world and just have all of these awesome adventures. But it isn't a place that is without flaw or without like fear. Peter Pan is always claiming to be fearless, but we see that he's still a boy, like despite his ego and his arrogance. Like, he's still a child, the child, basically, who never grows up. And it's just interesting to me to see childhood isn't this idyllic fantasy that sometimes we tend to think it is as adults. Like, it's scary to be a kid, especially when you're Peter Pan and you have to fight pirates all the time. And he won't admit it, but like, being a kid is scary because you don't necessarily understand everything that's happening around you. And you, like, the way Peter Pan experiences love, I think, is really, really fascinating. That he is, like, frightened by love because he doesn't understand it, and he thinks it's, like, this grown-up thing to do. And Wendy kind of forces it upon him, and, like, that's not something he wants anything to do with. So I just think Peter Pan is, like, just such an interesting case study of, like, what childhood is, and I think that's what Barry does best, is to encapsulate like this world of childhood, which is beautiful and fantastic and just idyllic, like I said before, but also shows that it's not perfect. Like, being a child and being innocent isn't like this great world that we always tend to think back on it as, like, oh, when I was a kid, like, things were so much simpler, and they were simpler because you were a kid, but it doesn't mean that you didn't understand or experience things that were beyond you, and that experience is really frightening. So I could talk about Peter Pan for a long time, but I'm more interested in what you have to say. If you have any experience with the story, an experience that is different from mine or similar to mine, or if you have any opinions or comments that you want to make, I'd love to hear them. Let's talk about this book because it's great and wonderful, and I still have a hard time describing it, even though I've thought about it so much, why it matters to me and why it's important and why there's a statue in Kensington Gardens. besides like the surface level it was set there, but like why it's just such a story that has stuck in our cultural imagination. And I'd like to hear what you have to say about that. And so if you have anything, leave it in the comments, make a video response, let's start a discussion, and I will see you next time. Bye!